Dear Heavenly Father, as we gather for this meeting, we seek your wisdom and guidance. Illuminate our minds so that we may make decisions that align with your will. Help us to communicate effectively, respect differing opinions, and remain united in our purpose. Let your Holy Spirit lead our discussions and grant us clarity in every matter. We ask a special blessing for those families that are caught up in the floods in Kentucky and Tennessee. And we ask that you have safety and a blessing over our president and his envoy as he's over in Saudi Arabia and over in the Middle East. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
honor
Under
the
the
text
of the flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas,
one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you very much for that.
Well, found God.
Do you have any? Okay, we'll move to item number 3, comments from the public. It looks like we have 2. Is it Charles?
Shirley?
Okay,
Yes,
welcome.
thank you. Hi, I'm Charles Shirley. I'm here tonight to ask for your vote. I'm running for appraisal district. I currently serve on the Montgomery County Hospital District. And the reason I'm running for appraisal district is I feel like in some ways, in many ways, we are being over-evaluated by the appraisal individuals. The one reason I feel that way is there's a lot of statistics to back it up, but the number one is, as I said, I serve on the hospital board. Last 3 years in a row, we have come up short in the amount of taxes that we've been able to collect. And the reason why we budget a certain amount and we're coming up short, the reason why is the appraisal district is overvaluating. Lots of people are successfully challenging their appraisals. And don't get me wrong, I think that's great. If I can successfully challenge mine, I will. And I'm happy for those who do it. But the problem is for entities like yourself and entities like ours, it's hard to budget for exactly how much you need to have when they're overvaluating. There are several reasons for that. But we need oversight by the appraisal board over the district management itself. As you're probably aware, the last chief appraiser was fired by the county. And one reason why is because an outgrowth of this. It wasn't just the county that came up short, as we probably saw in the Conroe Courier about their tax income coming in lower, but it was also, it affected us. First year we were $1 million short. Second years we were $1.5 million short. We may be $2 million short this year, not know yet. I don't know if you're aware of the hospital district, but we don't have a hospital. We run the ambulance system around the county, and we on this movement towards this year, we feel like we're probably going to do about 50 million. That's what we budgeted. I don't know if we're going to actually collect that. Once again, it's because of all these challenges. Going back to statistics, to feel like that we're over valued. Traditionally, the number of successful challenges has been about 1% to 2%. Well, the last 3 years it's jumped to about 10%. So that factor right there, if they're doing their job properly, it should be about 1% or 2%. So anyway, make a long story short, I only got 3 minutes, but I wanted to ask for your vote. I would appreciate your vote. I feel like the appraisal board needs to do more oversight and more guidance over the appraisal management system. And I ask for your vote. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Thank you.
I got a question, Charles.
Yes, sir.
And I have heard of you, and I've heard really good things about you, but what happened to the appraisal board? Didn't something happen where they didn't meet in an election recently?
That is absolutely true. The election that we're going through right now should have happened a year ago because they didn't meet the deadlines. As you probably are aware, the legislature changed the way all of the appraisals boards are set up across the state. We have 5 who are appointed by entities, and we have 3 that are elected. A year ago, we elected 3. Those folks are in there. But a year ago, we were all supposed to have this election, and those 5 people were supposed to be appointed. Those 5 individuals, their terms ran out at midnight, December 31st of this last year. So they're operating without authority.
Right.
They don't have a quorum. Because to get a quorum, you got to have 5, because there's 9 of them when you count the tax collector, Tammy McCray, right?
And they have no legal standing to continue.
Technically, they don't. And also, when those seats, those 5 seats, their terms ran out, they were supposed to send out notices to everybody in this room and every other taxing entity saying, we have open seats, we're going to hold an election. Well, they didn't send out the notices saying that the terms had run out. They just started moving forward with the election. But they didn't tell notice because they didn't want to call attention to the fact that they're operating without authority. They had a meeting in January, and technically they didn't have a quorum, but they went ahead and done it. So,
Thank you for coming.
absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
You guys have a good evening.
Number 2 is Laura Norton.
I put myself on the list because I heard the conversation before the meeting and I realized that the email I thought I sent did not go through. But this morning I was working through my mud packet and the subject is our annual update. And back, I don't know, 4 years ago, I started the annual update and it was a means to update residents about what's going on. So I did have a page and a half and I remember printing this right as I sent it. I thought I sent it out, but apparently I didn't. So with the 3 minutes I have, and I don't think this is on the agenda later on, is it?
It's
Yeah,
on
it's
the
that-
general manager report.
Do you want to discuss it then? Because I can read what I have then, or I could do it now.
Either way, I think it's fine. Why don't you take your 2 minutes and read it now
Okay.
if you want?
So generally, as it is now, I think it looks like taxpayer funded campaign material. So I have specific examples of things that I'd like to change, but, on that line, I'd like to change that we're more honest about the taxes. We're collecting the same amount of taxes last year, adjusting the tax rate down as home values increase. And the exemption that we haven't changed, it's kind of PR to mention that, it's campaigning. It's good that we mentioned the 3.6 million funding, but we need to state what the rehabilitation is for, why it's significant, when it's going to happen. Otherwise, it's just so what? This could be here or in the looking ahead section. The saying that it's best tasting water, I feel like it's PR, but we can discuss these things, I hope. What is the project progress on the MUD 67 flooding project? What are our issues? What are our plans for the future? This is an opportunity for us to share with residents what's really going on. Also, what is the progress on the wastewater treatment plant 1 project? The study is mentioned, but it's been underway for 5 years. We should be providing more clarity than just we're studying it. What's the outlook for costs for the upcoming renewal work? It's a great time to inform people and not just keep saying the same thing over and over. I think it would be good if we stated we had changed leadership. I think we might have told the residents that Jim Stinson has retired and Eric Peterson has taken over, but what about Mike Mooney to Kim Wright? I think interested residents would want to know about what's going on with 1488 and that I think we've started to take down trees in that area. I don't even know myself, but it would be good to tell them that's coming down the pike. Anyway, I think it's good we added our email addresses and I want to make sure they're on our website because, you know, Cynthia Ullman, who was on this board, she's a member of the Woodlands Bike Club and she was asking people, you know, on MUDs, what they could do about a drainage ditch and maybe do some biking back there or something like that. For some reason, she was interested in getting contact information and she couldn't find it out on our website. So there's more, but
Can you just make suggestions or edits and then send it to Eric to update it?
that would be a full redo, I think.
We're gonna
Pretty,
discuss it.
pretty large.
You were, I think you were doing this as a resident, making recommendations and suggestions, right?
Mhm.
So that's good. I think we
And I wanna
have
make
that,
sure
made
I
notes of
got
it, so we can, we'll discuss it.
Thanks.
What the steps are as to how we're gonna proceed forward. That make sense? Okay, number 4, any adjustments to ponder?
I have one.
Okay,
We didn't receive, it's Don Warren at 74 West Wedgemere. So he mailed his check in on the 25th of January and we never received it. So he went online and paid in February by credit card. We then received his check. So, and he paid it on time. So I'm asking for a refund of $55.80.
How do we do that? That's.
Second.
reasonable. We have a motion, we have a second, all in favor? Aye, opposed, none. Okay, motion passes, adjustment passes. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, we come up to the consent agenda, which this month includes the tax collector's delinquent report, I think is what we call it. Otherwise, everything else is the same. We have a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Motion to accept.
Okay, we have a second. Any comments or discussion? I have some, but anyone else have anything? So my question comes, and I probably ask this every year, so apologize for that. On the delinquent rolls report. I mean, it's a long report. There's a lot of little couple $100 items, but there's quite a few where we've got multiple years. I think the longest one is actually like 6, I don't know. Well, because the first delinquency is 2008, including up to 2024. It looks like some years were paid and some years weren't. So the entries, I guess maybe my question, there's that question of what do we do with chronically just missed tax payments? I think that's what I'm seeing when I look at this, but maybe I'm just reading.
Depends on if it's a deferred account, quarterly pay.
So on page 18,
That's common.
Jeannie, and maybe it is, I just looked quickly and it says there's an over 65 deferral.
Okay, if it's an over 65 deferral, the law states that they can defer their taxes. And only, instead of being charged penalty, interest, and attorney fees, they're only charged interest at 5% a year. And they can defer their taxes and not pay them, and then when they pass away, the heirs have to pay them, or if they move, then the sale of the house pays the taxes. And we watch them real close to make sure they
Yeah.
don't exceed the value,
Okay,
or if they get enclosed.
I did not know that. Okay, and then there's another entry. So a deferral could be for over 65. There's another one, just it says dash disability. It doesn't say deferral, but it's a multi-year one as well.
The deferred and over 65 can do that.
Disability and over 65. Okay. All right. And then there's, hold on, there's one more. If you look on page, there's a long report. Sorry. It's way down here. Give me 1 second. I'm getting there. It looks like a commercial account. It looks like there's 2 sets of years listed. I'm getting there. Sorry. I should have marked it down there. Just way down here. I may not be able to find it. Maybe I can just ask you. Well, here it is. Page 35. It's Code Ninja. It's a little store over. It's over in Group Road Research 4.
Apparently they're out of business. We are waiting for the appraisal district to remove it or show us proof that they are still in business. They haven't rendered their property. It's business personal property. So it's furniture, fixture, and equipment.
Gotcha. It's a little
Okay.
amount. I mean, it's not a big
Yeah.
dollar amount. I was just curious what the entry was. It just looked different than the rest of them.
And they have late renditions with it because they have to render their property to the appraisal district
Gotcha.
by April of every year.
Okay, there's a couple of them just like that.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, that explains it. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, that's all the comments I had. So we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor to accept the consent agenda? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Consent agenda accepted. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we'll go on to item 10, the consider the official ballot for Montgomery Central Appraisal District relative to the election of board member and the adoption of resolution casting a ballot in connection therewith.
Well, I would say, no, we, as this MUD 47 only have 15 votes, is that right, based on our data? I move that we put it all behind Charlie Shirley. I've heard lots of really good things about him. He's clearly well-versed in everything with MCAT. He's the only one who took the time out of his day to come here. We have a low percentage overall for all the MUDs, what that's going to affect. And I think we should all rally behind one and put all 15 votes towards Charlie Shirley.
Did you motion that?
Yeah, that was,
I'll second that.
I have a question though, just on process. We can put it all behind, we would have to all agree to do it for one candidate. Can we do multiple coming? How do we vote on this? Is this a simple majority? We have to agree on how we're going to divide up all 15?
Well, it's a motion to approve the ballot and the resolution. So you could have a vote, whether it's all in favor or not all in favor, but a majority vote to go behind one candidate. You could split the votes between multiple candidates if you get a majority vote to do that. It's really, what allocation of votes and get a majority of the board members to support that allocation.
And we would have to all agree to that split. Or
It's
at least
directors.
three of the five, right?
I've known Charles for a couple of years and as a very active resident focused elected official, always out trying to do good, especially with the hospital district. And so I feel as a resident, he'd be looking out for us.
I can get behind that too, all 15 to Charles Shirley.
Okay. So, any other comments? We have a motion?
that was a motion.
Motion second.
Good. Second.
All in
Okay,
favor?
on favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. So all 15 for Charles R. Shirley.
At this time, we come and present.
He's great.
Okay, the monthly SJRA Woodlands report, Chris.
All right, the moment you've all been waiting for, right?
Sure.
All right, so our report begins on page 45, runs for quite a little bit. I don't have anything to add to the report. What I did want to chat about is starts on page 65, but mostly page 67. So the short story of this is we've done our excess funds calculation. That is draft at this point. It becomes official March 1st once we redo the calculation. Make sure we have above 90% revenue per the resolution. But we have recommended and the trustees have acted and approved to refund any excess funds from FY24 to all the MUDs. So page 67, the bottom table splits out the refund going to each MUD. MUD 47 would receive just over $856,000 of those $5.1 million worth of excess funds. So I'll have
That's 90% of 892. I'm showing 47 at 892,000. Oh, pardon me.
That's gallons. So go down to the next.
Okay,
Go down to the
yeah,
next one.
okay.
That's the money.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so that would actually be 16.7% of the 5.1. Yeah. Then after that, just for reference, that is the resolution that actually explains the creation of the R&R fund, the excess funds and the emergency fund as well, just so you can have it in its entirety. But there is no action for this MUD. Action was taken at the trustees meeting. And once we reach March 1st, our board approves it, then we'll issue refunds after our board approves.
So later on, we have a topic on item 16 about trustee voting. This came up obviously last Wednesday. It was unanimous around the table. I didn't think anyone would object to it, so I also voted for it. Okay.
Are we moving on from the SRA? Because I only had a question.
No, I was just responding to what the trustees did and
Oh, okay.
follow up from last
Gotcha.
meeting and what we're going to talk about this meeting. So no, we can, yeah, ask away.
Happy with that.
Well.
Yeah.
You know, I was contacted by Darlene Bonnewell, and I believe you were, Hugh, and I heard you were.
I tried walking to her house today, yeah.
So, and I talked to her, and she was concerned about her backyard. I think, Ed, you somewhat got involved, and we were just trying to understand. I got to tell her something. I got to call her back. I know we were going to talk about the policy of the SHRA and I think her biggest thing is just the eyesore in her backyard. She lives in the same area as Hugh, but I guess I saw pictures and so forth of her backyard. And even if she puts her fence back up.
Let's clarify, that's not her backyard where the trees are stocked.
Right.
That is SHRA property.
Yes. They're piled up very high, and I just trying to get an idea of what is the policy of.
The policy for our tree contractor is to cut trees, drop them to the ground, cut them into manageable pieces and let them decay on the ground. We rarely haul it off. Now, in this particular case, as I've shared with Mr. Conant, both trees that fell were Darlene's trees. They were on her property. When we went and looked, and I have some pictures that show where the approximate property line is in reference to where the trees are. They were both from her property. We cut them up at no charge to her, stacked them, and walked away in lieu of her having to incur that expense.
I guess her, from what it sounded like to me in my conversation, she was wondering about the big piles back there behind her house, if those ever get cleared up or if they just stay there.
They stay in decay.
They just stay in decay in the
Yes, sir.
pile.
That's what the township's policy is too. I actually had, it was the house behind your rental, or the tree behind your rental that they cut down. And they cut it into really large pieces, but there's circles. So I was able to push them around because I don't like them all standing in one spot. It is an eyesore. So I guess if that's the policy of other governmental entities, but her video looks really bad and I wanted to go see what it was. And what,
Where is it?
188 West Shadow Point Circle.
She did say that it's impeding all the debris is impeding the flow of water. I don't know which water, but she says it causes her backyard to pool up now.
I don't know anything about that.
So you contacted her, I've contacted her. David Smith he gave me her name last Wednesday at the trustee meeting. You haven't contacted her, you're going to, is that right? Or you're just gonna try to get about it.
shared text with her and then I forwarded it to those guys.
Yeah.
But I was out walking today and my attempt to go to her house was a bomb because of the rain. I had to go home.
I mean, obviously there's a major floodplain back there, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And all those, my old house was just like 10 houses down from there, so pretty really familiar with that area. And yeah, things fall down and trees fall down all the time back there. So I understand the policy about not moving it. I understand that it is a bit of a mound of debris that she fortunately didn't spend probably about $1,500, having to take down the trees. That's what it cost. I spent about triple that during that storm.
It might have been about 1,500 per tree.
Yeah, right.
And cut it up and
That's the going rate. That's the going rate.
Right.
Is this on the Panther branch or a tributary into the Panther? Or Bear? Pardon me.
Well, it comes back, if you follow it to the north, it kind of comes up to the high school, back behind the high school.
Okay.
Then
Not Bear
behind
Ranch.
IMCA.
so that's fair.
It's Bear.
Yeah.
So it's not sitting in the ditch.
No.
No creek.
No. I mean, the ditch that wanders back in there, it does get very active during flooding. I mean,
Yeah.
it can fill up, but generally it's probably 1.5 feet wide. Just a little meandering kind of.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, the 5 months that pay the maintenance on Bear, Panther and Alden, we mow or our contractor mows 100 to 150 feet either side of the center line of the ditches. Everything else was left natural. And so that's any tree that comes down, whether it's up close to the fence, backyard fences or off in the woods, we drop to the ground and cut it up into pieces and let it decay.
So SJRA incurred the cost through its own contractor to do this work.
Correct.
That's gonna show up somewhere in somebody's budget somewhere.
In the tree budget that you all approve as part of our annual budget.
And is it the tree budget kind of in that area, or is it?
It's for the whole
For the whole.
Panther, Alden, Bear branches and the reservoir.
Should we even approve that expense?
You
What-
approved it
what
as a part of the budget.
Okay,
It's just inclusive
Down
of.
to that level, but it's just rolling in. The point is that the MUDs are kind of paying for that.
Correct.
The MUDs that are doing that. I mean, I think it's the right thing to do personally. I think it was a.
Now, if you
a
instruct
decent
us to
outreach.
have them moved, we will get them moved, but that's different from the policy.
And you start creating exceptions to policies, and then you start having that.
Mhm.
I mean, I can tell, I've got 30 friends along that area, that whole area. And they,
Wow, all your friends.
but I mean, they've all had,
There's one camera right here.
they've all had trees that have fallen into that area and had some kind of discussion. And most all of them call me and go, "What's the deal?" I said, "It's your tree in your yard. You pay for it, right?"
Yeah.
But there's some that are very close. So I'm not. So
So she came out pretty good on the deal.
well, I don't think she paid anything. Yeah, I mean, she has a low fence. The fence is a kind of a waist high fence back there, which I understand what most of the homes do because it's kind of a natural area back behind there. So, are you want to talk back to her if you want? I mean,
Yeah, I'll call her. I told
Okay.
her I would.
we don't have three of us don't have to do
I,
that.
I did mention that it's the SGRA's
Yeah,
deal,
yeah,
not ours.
Yeah, and she's aware of that. I think
Yeah.
she's been told this. I just don't know.
By our staff,
And Ed, I think you said you're happy to talk to her as well.
I am.
Yeah.
But we don't need half a dozen people talking to her.
She was very pleasant to talk to.
Okay. If you need something else, let me know, or let Eric know and he'll let me know.
Thank you, Ed.
Anything else on item 11 on the Woodlands, SJRA Woodlands report? And, right. Okay, we'll move on to item 15.
Well,
Update on, I'm sorry, 12, Bear Branch. I have dyslexia about to research forest.
so we had a stakeholder meeting a few weeks ago. As you recall, the engineer was to go back and run a couple different models, different scenarios at the model. They did that. They brought it back, presented that to the group and identified. And the intent was to try to see if, the originally identified scenario, were there any other scenarios that could create a better bang for our buck or a better benefit to the community? And the result of running these other two models, two scenarios, did not create a better benefit scenario. So we agreed that the engineer would go back to the original scenario and kind of come up with and develop kind of some specific benefit areas specific to Research Forest and in the service area to identify the level of benefit along research and in that area as far as the water surface elevation reduction along the road. That was the original intention of the project, to try to reduce the level of water on research, and then obviously that would have surrounding impacts to the community as well if you accomplish that. So they're going to be working on that and getting it to us hopefully soon, and then we'll have another stakeholder meeting and see where to go from there.
I think LGA was gonna go back and try to use their, I can't remember what they called the department, to go look into government funding, see if there's any other funding out there, because it sounds like the MUDs don't want to kick any other more, than we already have. Because the cost is too prohibitive if, we have to add another 15 million.
Right. They brought up the idea that mobility could be one of the ways to get some money.
Yeah.
So address it more as a mobility issue and a funding issue. Arthur, brought that up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Item 13, Attorney's report. What do you have for us today?
Well, our the legislature busy at work, so we are continuing to monitor legislation that's introduced since the trustee meeting and our MUD meetings this week. The House has finally assigned committee chairs and committee members to those in the House. And so that's finally moved, and it's very late. And we anticipated that would be the case with the change in the speaker position. So slow going in the House. Early on in terms of time for introducing bills, the deadline to introduce general bills is around mid-March. Session ends at the end of May. There's a handful of bills that we're monitoring right now. One would deal with taking away the distinction between developed and developing districts for rollback taxes. And so the AWBD membership worked really hard to get that distinction for truly active developing districts. So that would be certainly a setback for those active developing districts. So we're watching that pretty closely. Another bill would require for agendas to be posted based on business days as opposed to calendar days. So that would have an administrative impact. There's a bill that would prohibit the placement of funds at intergovernmental risk pools like TexPool and TexStorm, would instead require them to be with the comptroller and be invested that way. I don't know what the impact would be in terms of the yield there. I know that Maureen and a lot of other accounting managers and bookkeepers prefer TexStar, TexPool, Texas Class, those risk pools, as opposed to getting CDs at individual banks because they're liquid and they have very competitive rates to CDs, and especially when you're in a more dynamic interest rate environment like we've been in for the last couple of years. You don't really know where things are going, so you don't really want to lock them up for a long period of time. So we'll see where that goes. I've always cautioned folks early in the session to take some of the bills introduced with a bit of a grain of salt, because the kill rate on bills is usually about 85%. So out of every 100 bills that get introduced, only about 15 or so get all the way through the process and get passed. So more to come, but they're certainly busy in Austin. I'm sure you saw about the Senate bill regarding the additional property tax relief for school district taxes. So that's good news for taxpayers.
Yeah.
See where the rest of it goes, but happy to answer questions if you have them.
On the developed, undeveloped, understand that, right? That are they trying to, let's say, remove the distinction so that there's one kind of max rate, and that would be at the lower rate? I assume that's what where it's going, right?
Basically be treated as though as a city, and that just doesn't make sense and we went through the whole education process with legislators back when the bill was first passed a few sessions ago, that when you have new political subdivisions that are created or in early stages of development, you're adding a lot more value relative to the existing value. So the concept of limiting your maintenance tax to a 3.5% number when your value is increasing, significantly doesn't make a lot of sense. And so, we were able to work through that and get a compromise solution there with the developing dynamics. So we'll see where that goes. I mean, again, bills that are introduced are a lot different than bills that pass. So that's all I have on the furniture report. I know I have a few other items, but wanted to answer the other questions y'all have before moving on. All right, if not, item 14, the order establishing office and meeting places outside the district. So we are proposing that the districts add the community center across the street, as well as the Woodlands Township office, as additional locations where we can hold board meetings. This is an outgrowth of discussions to hold some, all MUD meetings that could potentially involve deliberation and discussions about River Authority facilities and improvements, as well as Woodlands water facilities and improvements. And in order to be able to have those meetings, we need to have published agendas. And in order to do that, the water code requires that we adopt an order for any locations that are outside the district. So we'll keep this location which is outside of MUD 47, and then add those other 2 locations. So need a motion to approve that order and then authorize publication. The water code requires that we not only adopt the order, but that we publish it in the newspaper.
I'll move that we adopt the order and publish it in the paper.
Okay, so you have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so motion carried.
All right, and 15, what I refer to as the TikTok policy. So you've probably heard a lot in the news about the federal legislation regarding the TikTok ban and the president's stay on that, and various groups that are looking to buy the U.S. operation of TikTok and ByteDance. This is about state legislation. The state legislature has also prohibited TikTok and other related software from being on state or local devices, owned or leased devices. So for 95+% of MUDs, they don't own the equipment. Consultants will, but the districts will not. Woodlands, of course, is unique. We have staff, we have equipment. I visited with Eric about the policy requirements, and he said that Woodlands Water is in compliance and won't be an issue to put the policy in place. You've got in your packet an executive summary that lists the current groups and software. Let's see, page 84. Yeah, page 84 has the current list. So this list is promulgated by the Texas Department of Information Resources. It's an evergreen list, or I guess evergreen's the wrong word. It's an organic list that changes in time. This is what the list is now. The statute allows the governor by proclamation to add additional groups. In one of the earlier meetings today, someone who's a lot more tech savvy than me was talking about some server that the Chinese, have been able to use, and was asking about why is that not on the list. And I said, well, the governor, that's at the prerogative of the governor. The statute gives him the authority by proclamation to deem additional things to be prohibited. So this will change over time, and the policy is set up to address that on page 86, section B, subitem 2. It talks about any social media application heretofore or hereafter specified by proclamation of the governor in accordance with the statute. So there may be additional prohibited software applications or developers or hardware equipment and manufacturers in the future. That's just the list snapshot as of now on page 84.
What's the consequence if there is something installed on a Woodlands Water desktop?
I have to go back and look at what the penalties are. I couldn't tell you.
It's all, you're not going to jail. It's monetary.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what the penalties were for violation of that, but I don't think we want to be on the wrong side of that.
Yeah. I was just curious. Are you using software or something to keep track of?
Yeah, how do you
Yeah,
monitor?
We have well, I'd rather not go into public
Okay,
session.
okay, but you do monitor.
Yes.
You do monitor, okay. Fair enough.
I move that we adopt policy ADM 7 weeks.
Okay, so we have a second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
That's all I have. Thank you.
You. Okay, item 16, discuss the policy outlining how the trustee votes at the trustees meetings as a carryover from last meeting. If I could just kick this off, I went through the last year's worth of trustee meetings and kind of just listed the things that were, review and adopt, kind of the types of items. I thought I'd just read this to you, and we can just start from there if you'd like. The first one is consent agendas. All right, I think those are pretty standard, straightforward. The audit report, we also see a version of that here at the MUD. Consultant engagements is kind of a catch-all. There's just a few times when a SJRA or WWA might ask for a authorization to engage a consultant or a contractor to do some specific bit of work.
These all sound like kind of boring things, like.
Well, these are mostly all boring, yeah, but let me just finish them. Yeah.
I don't talk about all the consent agendas I've
Yeah.
approved.
Yeah,
I
I
talk
just-
about my stance against spending money on 1488. That was the big vote.
Understand. I just wanted to just give you a flavor of the whole gamut,
Mhm.
and then we can kind of approach it from there if we could. The one we're about to do this evening, which is adopting the prevailing wage rate, we just did that last time. That's a pretty perfunctory kind of vote. There's a couple representative kind of votes, which we know about, the Regional Flood Planning Group representative, which I think Arthur heads now as Region H. And some of these are multi-year assignments. So they can be one and done for several years, and then, or somebody, leaves, or they have
Is on the Regional Flood Planning Group and Region H, both of those?
maybe it's just this Region H. Yeah. Excess funds distribution, something we just talked about. Last year, it wasn't so intuitively obvious what the decision-making was. This year it was, and maybe I'll explain that a little bit. Last year, there was some excess funds, but SJRA had some specific projects. They said, hey, we have these in the budget, and we could we'd return it to you, and then you're going to give it right back, or we can put them toward these projects that have been kind of approved. And there was a generator and things like that. And generally, I think the idea was why do all that with the money back and forth? But there was kind of a philosophy, hey, if there's an excess, let's get it back to the MUDs. So this year, when Chris explained it last week to the trustees, he said, hey, we've got the same table you just saw, but we don't have projects to put it to, so you guys get it back. It was that was the recommendation from SJRA, and it was a pretty obvious. I mean, it took about 4 seconds for everyone to agree. So, if it gets controversial, we can talk about it, but I just wanted that was one that was kind of stuck out. Trustee officers is really done at the will of the president, I think. Or would we vote on those? Those get voted on, right?
Vote on those after each election cycle.
That's right. So that was done May, I guess it's May of every even year, I think is what it would be. That's when we did it.
Unless we have a vacancy that comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So May, we can kind of prepare for that if we want. Talk about that when it comes up in the month of May. It won't be this year, obviously, but it'll be in 2026. Another authorization, which was an example of SJRA to conduct a feasibility study related to, I think, the wastewater treatment plant, but this was what that was. And then the board committee members aren't voted on. They're appointed, I think, by the president. So that's just kind of something that we just see. And then there's the budgets, obviously, and that's kind of the primary one at the SJRA budget, the WWA operating budget, including the rates that go with those for WWA. And then obviously it was the GRP representative, which I think is obviously a multi-year. I don't know, is that 4 years or 4 years? So that won't come up again for a while unless.
Yeah, a couple years, right?
Yeah, there's a partial term.
Yeah.
So that's 1 year's worth of stuff that the trustee talks about and kind of that we review and approve. And then I'm on 2 committees. There's a public education committee, and then there's a personnel committee. And the education committee is really the only approvals that ever come there is like, do we approve the draft of the communication plan that then comes into the MUD, right?
Does the famous audit committee still exist?
Yeah, that's a standing committee. I think Paul runs it and Ron is on that.
And Brad is now on it.
And Brad Houck, yeah.
Brad Houck, Ron Wilson, and who else did you say?
Paul Martin.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm. The Public Education Committee is still an ad hoc committee. I think that's right. And the Personnel Committee is really to discuss, policies around anything that Eric brings to us, or when we're talking about merit and salary increases and exactly which typically get right into the budget. So it's really to talk about him and his direct reports and how he presents to us. So that's a smaller subcommittee. So that's it.
So what's the point of going through all that, Hugh? So,
Seriously?
yeah, seriously, because, it says here, discuss a policy outlining the trustee votes at the trustee meeting. You just want to go through, from what I understand, what Diane's intention was. She wanted to come up with some sort of rule for the trustee to vote in future meetings. And as far as I'm concerned, what you did back in December, there's no excuse. All those excuses that you gave last month, they mean absolutely nothing. When we don't really specify what our trustee is to do very often, because we trust the trustee to do our will on that board. But when we unanimously, or even a majority of us vote to direct you to do something and you don't do it, I could care less what the excuse is. You didn't do it. How can we trust you again? So that's where I go with it. The only
So that was the conversation we had last month.
right, the only
So why are
rule
we having
that I
again
can
tonight?
see to develop is the trustee, when he's so directed, he must do as he's directed. Otherwise, he should either resign or be removed. And that's it.
Or come back in the following meeting where we put it to another
He
vote.
had that option and he didn't do it.
We're talking about the future.
Going
plans.
forward.
Yeah.
Is
I
that,
did vote, just like you asked me to,
Yeah.
and there was a different vote. And we don't have to rehash, Brad, we could talk about this every meeting if you want to for the rest of the year, or we could just agree to disagree.
Okay.
When you say I didn't vote like you said I should have, actually, I can go show you the notes on my notes that said, our board voted for Brad Houck, and that's exactly how I voted. And then there was a different vote, and we had not voted on those different candidates.
You want
So
to rehash that again? We can do that here.
You're the one
We-
bringing it up.
Yeah,
Not
that's
me.
right. Well, it's on the agenda to talk
I'm
about.
surprised that you're acting this way. I
Well,
brought this
because-
up in
because
good
I don't want
faith.
you to get away with it. It's BS.
Let's,
I'm gonna call, you're out of line.
No, you're out of line. You were out of line in December.
we try to come to a rule here, some sort of, if the vote that MUD 47 agrees on doesn't come to fruition in the next trustee meeting, that we have the right to bring it back for,
table it?
that there's a no vote from 47, or I'm sorry, not a no vote. There's a
Abstain.
abstain, there
Yeah.
you go. And then it comes back and then we
It
decide.
may not come back.
The same thing that happened with Diane abstaining here last time. Then the
But it is the will
We don't
of
have
MUD
a vote.
47 is that we directed it to go one way and then it wasn't. So, okay, there's nothing I can do until I go back and talk to my people.
Right.
I'm backing away.
If Hugh would have stayed as we directed him and voted for Brad Houck, because that was the motion to vote for Brad Houck,
Which I did.
GRP
Which
board.
I did.
Well, it wasn't in the first ballot. It wasn't in the second ballot. It was vote for Brad Houck for the GRP board in the trustee meeting.
We know.
There was a trustee meeting. There was a vote for the GRP board. Brad Houck was on the ballot and you didn't stay with him. Everybody else
We're
did.
beating a dead horse.
If he would have done that, we would have came back here. We probably would have chose other people. Or if Brad Houck wasn't on the ballot, I could see that.
I think the simple answer here versus trying to come up with ideas about votes that we can't anticipate, what they will be, because, we heard a list of what some votes were over the last year. It was a unique situation, what we had at the trustee meeting. There's obviously a difference of opinion on how that was handled. I think the simple answer is to say, look, we've had by trial and error the situation come up where we had something presented to the MUD board about direction for a particular vote. It went to the trustees, that vote happened, of course, and so if there's a different vote that's been posed on the same issue, then that comes back to this MUD to rediscuss. That's where the difference of that, from what I'm hearing, that's where the difference of opinion is that it was, from Hugh's perspective versus what your perspective is to say, look, okay, if there's a vote that's brought, these are two candidates, how do we vote on these candidates? And then if something else, occurs at the trustee meeting because there's not a majority, then it comes back. That's the easy solution.
Yeah, I don't see a way to put a rule in here. I think you build in your motion. But
Yeah.
it's kind of petty that we have to do that.
Well-
When the motion was to vote for Brad Houck, he was still on the ballot. That's who you should have voted
And
for.
I don't want to get into the disagreement that y'all have. I'm just trying to find a way to address the concern and be able to ferret out that, in the
How do we
future,
move forward?
is that if we have that vote at the trustee level and you've had direction, and then because of the failure of a majority, then there's kind of a spontaneous alternative vote that's proposed by a trustee, which any trustee can propose an alternative if the first fails, then your trustee brings that back to the board.
But I don't have the unilateral right to do that.
No, but you could
Just
say,
you understand.
But I understand that.
Just talk to me in a little better voice,
I
Brad.
am.
No, you're not. I would
If you would have
appreciate it
stuck
if
with it,
You have a code of conduct here about how we're supposed to talk to
if you
one
would
another.
have stuck with
You might
it,
try to follow it.
oh, I know the code of conduct. If you would have stuck with it, we wouldn't have had this issue.
We'd have had a tie.
We would have had a tie. And guess what? It would, the same thing that happened in the first ballot would have happened in the second, or they would have chose new candidates on both sides, or it would have went back to the MUDs to come up with new candidates. That's
I
it.
understand how the process works,
Right,
Brad.
but all the excuses you had last month meant nothing.
So what we need is some sort of trigger that if the trustee, if
the
what
vote-
we voted for is not the situation that the trustee is allowed to, or is able to vote on, then it gets tabled and comes back to us.
well, so I think what Hugh was pointing out is that, let's say there's a vote that's brought to approve. Let's use the budget for example. That's a lot easier one, the River
Yeah,
Authority
yeah.
budget. There's a budget that's brought to a River Authority budget. It comes to the MUD. It's presented. You vote to direct your trustee to vote in favor. And for some reason, that vote fails. And there's a on-the-spot modification of the budget, and someone at the trustee level calls for a vote and says, okay, I want to move to approve the budget as amended. At that point, Hugh would say, my board has, a policy that if the vote is, different, it changes from what they've directed me, that needs to come back. So I would like to table this vote because the motion is going to be made, maybe a second. So then, Hugh's going to come in if he isn't able to make a motion first to table the discussion. Then if they plow through that vote, there's nothing Hugh can do except abstain or any, any other trustee. But you can either try to make a motion first before an alternative motion is made to table it and bring it back. Or if the motion's made, then you can request that motion be withdrawn to table it. And if that is pushed through, then all you can do at that point is abstain. Just want to make sure everybody is clear about what the alternatives are for the trustee in that scenario. And the most common thing is the budget.
Well, generally, we don't direct them.
Right.
So, but when we do, we expect them to do as our will because we're a representative board.
Right.
Representative of the people, and all five of us voted unanimously to nominate and elect. Brett
Beyond
Howe.
voting unanimously, we all, or I at least remember making comments about Brad Howe. And I think I remember Craig doing the same. And it's that wasn't shared in the discussion. I mean, I watched the trustee meeting and I watched the vote, and the passion that I felt MUD 47 had for Brad Howe wasn't shared at the trustee level. And I very much believe that had you shared that, like I might have shared that there would have been some change votes on the trustee level board. That's what gets to me when I review all the meeting recordings. I think it looks like it was in the cards because at the meeting prior at the MUD 47 level, you made favorable comments about the first candidate, Kim Wright, but your vote was for Brad Howe. And then for the vote to have changed the way it did, it just seemed like, I'm sorry to say it felt like I was lied to or something. That was orchestrated. It was peculiar to have watched it go down and then watch the history of what I lived through and see it happen. Why did our vote change? So the whole thing, this vote was very different than all of the other votes that you listed that you've done as a trustee. So that's what makes this so significant.
All I can do is follow kind of the outline of what Brian said and continue to act in those ways. If I can avert a second or alternative type of approach, I can't force it back to the MUDs. That's going to have to be a majority to say, yes, we're all going to stop. We're all going to go back. That's going to have to be a majority vote. I can try to do that. Wouldn't have done anything last time, but if you want me to try that, I'm happy to do that. Happy to do it.
Well, if you would have.
We're gonna leave it at that, and we're gonna leave.
Brad.
It would have been a tie.
It would have been a tie, and guess what? It either would have came back here or new
Yeah,
candidates
okay.
would have been selected.
Right.
Should we need to take any action?
Doesn't sound like it. I tried to open this up legitimately, but that's not what
Yeah.
you want,
Sure.
so. Your piece of work.
There you are.
Okay. Item 17, discussion regarding proposed development along FM 1488.
Utilities are being installed, on that project and, I think they're, gonna be breaking ground on the development here soon. So it's moving forward.
Okay. What do you think their completion? Or wait, your best guess. I mean, is it, are they within 6 months?
At least, I would think. But I don't know that.
Yeah.
That's a total guess.
Yeah.
Cut down on the trees that they're ultimately going to.
I don't know that for sure. I believe they're breaking ground here soon on the sports.
That's the one behind the CVS, the Sycamore place.
Mhm.
But have you heard anything? They've sold one of the tracks to.
No, I've not heard any of that. No.
That it for that one?
That's it for that.
Okay. General manager's report.
All right.
Kick us off with that.
Sure, a few updates. Just want to let you know, we're still running the ditches, collecting all the asset information, condition assessment of the ditches and the associated piping and all that. So we're proceeding, making some progress. On the GRP, I did want to mention to you, the GRP committee canceled their meeting in January. That would have been our first. And it was canceled due to the freeze. It was that day, actually, that Tuesday. So the next meeting is next Monday. I did sit in on orientation with the SGRA I got a binder and a bunch of information, some background on the plant, et cetera. Made a copy of that and then also have already had a meeting with Brad, how to go through all that orientation information, gave him exactly a copy I got, went through all that together. And then also we kind of talked about goals and some, things that we might want to accomplish over the next, as this thing goes forward. So I committed to doing that to the trustees and to y'all, and I'm doing that. So going forward, I intend to give an update of the goings on of the GRP committee at the trustee meeting. And then that will be documented in the trustee report that you'll get in this meeting. So, unless there's something big that comes up, I probably won't pull it out, but in the MUD meetings, but it'll be in your packet, whatever was shared in the trustee meeting going forward. And then we've already scheduled Brad and I did mention Kim, Brad and I met. So we met, and then we've already scheduled our next meeting. Typically what we're going to do, what we agreed to do is kind of meet in between so we can debrief previous meeting and prepare for the next meeting kind of scenario. So we're doing that. We did have the second CWG community work group meeting on water renewal of the Woodlands, and was a really good meeting. Went through the general differentiation of responsibilities between the SGRA and the MUDs, and how Woodlands Water, migrates through that. We identified, so we kind of split out whose responsibility is whose assets are owned by who. And then that kind of led to a discussion on, okay, depending on whose assets it is, what are our different funding mechanisms to be able to fund projects, whether it's just typical R&R or, rehab rehabilitation, or if it's a capital project, and kind of how does that type of stuff get funded, whether it's water bill or taxes or wholesale rate or whatever the case may be. We didn't talk about any specific projects in that regard, but just more of a general discussion on whose responsibility the assets are and how we would fund them in a general sense. So thought it had a lot of good input and involvement from the community working group. So it's going pretty well.
Awesome.
And let's see, did want to update you on the matrix. I know we spent a lot of time putting that together. That was to be submitted to Corollo January 31st. They had reached out, and I think as part of the extension of getting some of this condition-based assessment on the walls and things, they had pushed that out and said, don't worry about sending it to us. Let us get a little further along. So I'm still holding on to that. That's not gone out to them yet, and it won't until they're getting close to being done with their analysis, and then they can run the matrix. What I did do in the meantime is build a one pager to put all 10 MUDs on the same sheet. So what you'll be able to see is, just kind of like you saw each decision that was made, all those, comparisons of the criterias, you'll see every MUD side by side and see how everybody voted. And so I'll pass that out once I get that to them, and I think it's the end of March now, and I'll get that.
Right.
I'll get that to them, or get that to y'all once I get that to them. Go for there. And then I want to point out there's a document, there's a little news deal that we did, Storytel, on the digital CI on ditches and what we're doing on the ditches. So take a look at that if you have a moment. And then did include a few thank yous from some residents as well, pointing out some good work by our staff. And with that, I'll kick it over to John for our communications.
Eden. On page 95, you got the start of your communications report. We're winding up our first quarter, which the focus there is on the story of our water. And we're going to be segueing into water quality for the next focus area. So you'll see on our water bill at the end of the month, we'll have bill add on water quality, touting the number of tests we do and your spirit rating by the state as a service provider. And a lot more about water quality going forward. Annual reports. So had some great back and forth. Thank you, Diane, especially for working with me on that. Are there any additional comments or questions or concerns before we publish?
Well, I
Yeah,
have
so
quite a few.
or had quite a few.
You get, okay, great. Get my pen out.
Or your pen, I think.
Yeah.
The computer.
All right. Oh, yeah.
That's good points too, Laura.
Thank you.
Very proud of.
Appreciate it. Well, how many, I think we have to ask the question of ourselves is, do we want this to really just be a PR thing, campaign opportunity? Or truly, talk about stuff like, I think it's important. If I lived in Alden Bridge, I'd like to know that they've started laying utilities for the project on 1488, something like that.
Can I jump
Yeah.
in? I agree with you that we should expand on some of those items like the flooding 1488, the Bear Branch, Panther Branch, but I don't view it as a political propaganda piece. I mean, if they want to get a hold of us, the back page, like it's not saying how great
But
we
you have
are.
to know that, and I guess just from being in advertising for 30 years and doing a lot of direct mail pieces, is realize that your audience is a big audience and they're all over the place and that. So you're
Yeah.
looking for almost, the pictures is what they're going to go for first.
Yeah,
And
it's
to
great.
have the number of stories that they go to and just little snippets in that, and realize that that's how at the bottom put down, we're having our meetings and you need to get more.
I love
thoughtful with them.
all of it. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that you probably want to go even deeper, maybe a second page.
Well, I don't know. Should we do a second page or should we just do a different stuffer? Is that this might be enough
Oh,
information
a
for
different
one?
one, a different one.
Yeah, and then there's no reason that we can't.
Yep.
There's more than enough issues that we can educate people. And when you have something like this, and I pick things just because of, well, like in Shadow Bend Park, all the people I run to in Shadow Bend Park, they all thought that it was the township that did all the mowing. And I'm like, no, it's just something they didn't know.
Mhm.
And they didn't know about the dam.
It's really good.
So it's kind of like education. Yes, it is, community relations. It's written at about a 6th grade level because that's what, in college you're supposed to be. That, it's and for those that speak Spanish, is that for them to be able to understand everything, they went through. But we have more topics that are going through that. Why can't we put one out every other month?
Is it cost prohibitive to do it second month?
How many accounts? 47, 7,000.
This one was a bigger one.
Yeah,
we could
so
do
you're
quarterly.
looking at about roughly 50 cents a sheet.
All right.
Well, no, I'm sorry, it's gonna be less than that. It's gonna probably come in around 2,500, I think.
$10.
No.
And then
I can get
maybe do it another 6 months or.
Like if we change this into, let's say, the quarterly update, and then we take all of Laura's concerns and we build that and we build a story around the other, and we get pictures around the other. And so we're talking about the trees going down on 1488. Let's get some pictures of that.
And maybe as the more trees go down, it'll be more relevant if we wait 3 months. So I'm suggesting we do.
Then we can talk about street repair.
What do you
We'll
think?
have pictures of that too.
Stick with this and then add your comments.
Well, we
I
can.
mean, we haven't
can
heard
do
them all yet,
quarterly.
I will say just, I mean, you can do whatever you want, but the intention of this was to highlight the accomplishments of the previous year. So giving current updates of an ongoing project isn't really that. Now, if you want to do that, that's a whole different thing. And I think a lot of your.
Well, it's funny to talk about the intention of it, because this was my baby. This was my idea originally. This was going back 4 years. We were the first one to do an annual report.
Especially with trees likely coming down on the Bear and Panther project. If you can get ahead of
There's
it.
lots of stuff we can talk about.
Yeah.
And this is a great way for like small little bites for people to get educated. And especially for those that are like, are too busy to want to go online and go onto the website. But if they really are like, I need to know more about this, well, one, they can talk to us. They've all of the QR codes that are on the back here, and then on the second page, it's personalized because, hey, there's real human people that are working there. So, I mean, going back to your point, it's like, when I did this specifically as community relations, a way for us to talk to our people. And if we have lots more to talk about, $2,500, that's a drop in the bucket. That's money well worth, because people read this. I go to the country club. I'm at Shadow Bend Park, and people read this. So I'm thinking this is a good communications vehicle for us.
It's great.
We did see significant response the last couple of years to these, and tracking website visitation off of these, and some other metrics. We build in metrics into the QR codes.
You said this 4 years?
So yeah, we saw a really good read rate. People are opening the emails, clicking on them.
Some of these comments came from constituents, and I'll let them know what you guys said. And if they would like to see 12th grade, because they're all college educated at least, that I talk to, whether they'd like to see what's really going on in more detail, or they'll settle with this. I don't know that they'd be for us going into, $7,500 more a year to
What
do
else?
quarterly things that aren't very detailed.
What else did they have? Other
Um,
questions?
I think I ran through a lot of it during open comment. I don't know that I skipped, but I can email it to you guys. It sounds, I'm getting that you don't want to change it, so. But if we could, take out Happy New Year, because it won't come out until March. I don't know. Wish him a happy St. Patrick's Day. But I think it's a PR, and it doesn't get into much detail. It doesn't, we did lower our tax rate, but why mention it? Because they're still being taxed the same amount. As a matter of fact, my tax rate, or my tax bill from Woodlands Water, really hasn't changed in the 30 years I've lived here. So
But we've got new
maybe
people
if
that
you look at
lose in all
inflation, it's
time
dropped.
that don't know these things.
And at least it's staying flat compared to valuation. So that's something to be proud of.
Well, the rate's gone down,
Well, that's what I mean.
valuation up.
We're keeping it relatively flat. Point is that it's not going up the way it could.
Yeah, so, right, I just thought I'd bring up
If you
those concerns.
forward those items to
I
us.
tried sending it again, see if you have it now. I think
Okay.
I have a Wi-Fi connection here. It does say I sent it at 11:31 this morning. I don't know what happened. But that's,
Is there
But we could get one
time to amend this, John?
I guess where I was heading was, we could look at those items that the constituents are wanting to hear about that you mentioned. And maybe we can put together some kind of piece that y'all can look at, that you can get out, either modifying this in the future or something else. Just if we're, that's what we always want to know about. If there's gaps that the community is not getting, that's part of what we're, doing in the PDC and the strategic communication plan. So we do a lot of different things, and it can be 47 specific, or it can be community specific. Either way, it doesn't matter. But if I can get that, then we ought to be able to kind of build some information around some of those pieces and bring it back to you.
When I think about reading something like this, really doesn't have the scoop. The scoop is, well, what's going on 1488? What's the new development? This is all things that people that are more engaged in the community really already knew about. And so would they may spend their time looking at it, but it's gonna maybe disappoint them because it's nothing new under the sun. So I don't know. It doesn't sound like I have much.
If I may,
support, but if you want to
you're
hear about
you're trying to get the largest audience possible. And what you're doing is you're driving down the middle on that bell curve. You're going for the 60%. There's going to be the 20% over here that want a lot more information. And there's going to be ones over here that look at all these words. Like, I'm not reading that. It's a lot of words.
It's the direct mail stuff.
And so, you can't be everything to everybody. So to Eric's point and some of your others, I think maybe some follow-up pieces or supplementary, or, where we can more target a specific audience. We can definitely work with you to develop that.
And you do put a lot of current stuff in your emails that I gotta tell you, I've been reading for years. So I think it's fantastic.
Well, and if you have suggestions for content for that weekly piece or other, there's a lot of different ways to skin this cat. I would love to hear that. If you think there's an issue that needs to be addressed, let me know.
All right. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
So I'm sorry. Okay. So where are we leaving off here? We good with this one? We want to work on something additional down the road, or I just want to make sure I'm clear.
Push it out the way it is.
Yeah. It says, I don't really feel like I have a lot of work to anything. So
Certainly, yeah, we do have time. We put
it's
that
going
today.
to be an annual report. I don't want to send out something like this quarterly. So we can use the internet or cheaper avenues. For us, it's real money, even though it is 7,500 or something, or whatever.
I'll get you that. I will get you that dollar amount tomorrow. I'll send it to you.
It's no big deal.
So
Something.
you know.
Yeah.
And we could focus on something that's like more project specific too, ongoing projects. This is last year's annual report, but then we've got kind of doesn't have to be quarterly, but it could be maybe a mid-year where we do beginning of years last year and mid-year on ongoing projects. We could do something like that.
I definitely appreciate the work that Diane put into this.
Yeah, I think that.
I know it takes work to do any of this kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, John.
Let's see, that is all of the items that I had. We did receive, well, I don't really know how we received it. There was a letter that a resident sent directed to Laura that came across our desk related to, so we didn't actually receive it directly, but it did get forwarded to us somehow. Resident received, after January, we received a reminder to, after this 12/31, a reminder to the community that tax payments due. It's due as of 1/1 and late on the 31st. So we sent out reminders to those that hadn't paid at that point. This individual received one, and he had written a check, and then I think the two crossed each other in the paths. And then I guess he was essentially questioning whether or not we're wasting postage to remind taxpayers to get their payments in. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. We do send a reminder out At that point, I think there was a couple $100,000 worth of uncollected taxes, of which that month, we got it. And so, it's a few $100s per district to send out reminders, and I think it's a well worth it.
And that's only going to the people who are delinquent.
At that moment in time.
Yeah, at the end of the year.
Obviously, there might be some
Well,
that crosses over.
When they're,
Yeah, not
Sorry, not
delinquent.
delinquent.
yeah.
That's coming, yeah.
We mail them out in October, the bill, so by the time January gets here, we've always sent out reminders to your customers
Mhm.
that it's coming due. You know,
Yeah, sure.
and a lot of people have thanked us very much for that. And, you
Yeah.
know, and sometimes people, you know, they do get upset, you know, because they get that, because they did mail it and it crossed in the mail. But we have to have a cutoff as well.
Or it could be lost in the mail and they don't know.
Right, and they don't know, exactly.
We have an extremely high collection rate, and I think all of the extra things we do to remind, to go to someone's house to take payment, I mean, all the different things that we do that you wouldn't get elsewhere, I think is well worth it.
I
So,
agree.
Yeah.
I think the letter was insinuating that there's thousands of dollars, many thousands of dollars that are being wasted in sending reminders, which isn't the case.
Well, sometimes people think that as they get it and they're like, well, you sent it to me, you sent it to everybody else and didn't realize, no, we can call it all the way down to just you.
So
Seems to make sense.
Any reminder, yeah.
Good practice.
that's all I had.
Okay, trustees report. Eric had picked up most of the items that were also in there. The only thing I would add is SJRA shared the Carollo, I got an update on the Carollo timeline of where they're committing to get the condition assessment, site layout, capital costs in April. Then the decision matrix, I think that's May timing, Eric. I think that's what they said. That's coincident with what you're talking about. And then June will be the final report. The AC pipeline, HDR, who's doing the AC pipeline analysis, June is when phase 2 is supposed to be completed. That'll be a condition assessment. There was a question if that condition assessment will include an estimate for costs to remedy, repair, fix the conditions that were seen. At the time, I think Ed said he wasn't sure. He was going to get back to us. Do you know if that's?
I thought he followed up and said yes. But
Did he? Okay.
I'll double check.
Okay.
I'll double check.
And that's where you would be, if the decision was made to proceed, you're butting up against the deadline for bond issuance or the.
Not on the AC pipe per se. Mostly the Carollo stuff is really kind of getting tight now. If we have to in the summer, really try to make if there's going to be a go, no go on the election for this year. And some of the discussion that came in the trustees discussion was, well, we don't have to have an election this year. We can wait till next year, the year after that, or the year after that. That wasn't a widely held opinion, but it was one that was expressed. But suffice it to say that by June/July, we have to make a decision. We're going to try to make an end of the year vote and go to the public. That'll be a pretty heavy lift by doing it by then. So this is really going to be just in time to say the least. But it is what we're working with, and we'll start seeing some more information come April. We were supposed to see something in March next month, the first kind of draft of the Carollo assessment of the destructive testing that they're doing, but that got pushed 1 month.
Yeah,
I think that's essentially sort it all down. The whole timeline moves a month, which is a month we kind of don't have. That's really it. Public Education Committee, we covered that. Attorney's report. Carollo is going to schedule some all mud meetings, though. Last point on that, and SJRA I think is going to start scheduling those.
We have. They're
already done.
Yeah, and that's moving
Into
green to.
I figured that's what was driving
That's
that.
exactly what it was. So
Yeah.
roughly the first week or so of April, May, and June, there will be meetings. And we just needed a venue big enough to hold, 50, because the the facility at the treatment plant, you know, it gets
Yeah.
35-ish. Not everybody always attends, so we get a, you know, there's room, but you know, if everybody attends, it doesn't fit. So we need, and it doesn't fit here either. So unless we, I guess, set something up in the lobby, which I hear apparently we've done in the past, but I'd rather just find a suitable facility. So that's,
Okay.
so the dates are identified. We'll be sending those out very soon. So everybody can start getting that on their calendar.
First week, April, May, June.
I mean, give or take, like, I think one's on the 8th, one's on the 5th, you know, whatever.
Kind of early.
But yeah, it's early, that first week or so of April, May and June.
I think that's it from that.
Yeah,
All right, item 20, we're gonna recess. We're not gonna recess.
we do need to.
Okay.
I could have, if I could have Kim stay. Please. Yeah, I think we don't need any